In this episode, we have the pleasure of welcoming Ben, a dynamic entrepreneur turned investor, to the podcast. Ben's journey is nothing short of inspiring, having started his first business at the age of 12 and later becoming a key player in the venture capital world. Throughout our conversation, we delve into Ben's experiences in launching one of the first .coms, his transition into seed investing, and the invaluable lessons he's learned about choosing the right board members. We also explore his passion for supporting early stage companies and his insights into the venture capital landscape in Latin America. Ben shares his thoughts on the traits that define successful founders and the importance of conviction and tenacity in entrepreneurship. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a seasoned investor, this episode offers a wealth of knowledge and inspiration. Join us as we uncover the stories and strategies that have shaped Ben's remarkable career. Hey, Ben, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, great to be here.
I appreciate you making the time, and I thought it would be great to reach out to you as you are a seasoned entrepreneur turned investor and now have focused a little bit on LATAM. So I thought it'd be fun to dive into your perspective. But before that, it'd be great to hear a little bit about your upbringing, your background, and then your journey into entrepreneurship.
Sure. Well, I mean, my whole life has been entrepreneurship. With all that entire question boils down to one thing. You know, I started my first business when I was 12, and my first job when I was 11. I worked for 25 cents an hour in credit at a used bookstore. Did nothing but entrepreneurship for about 25 years. That all culminated in starting one of the first .coms in 1993 in New York City. Took that public in 99. Never raised venture, so I actually had the freedom and flexibility to take that private, which was a great transaction for everybody involved at the time. And then I moved west. I ended up in California about 22 years ago and saw this big gap in the market between angel and venture. So I started what ended up being one of the first two institutional seed funds in 2007. You know, all throughout my life, I've noticed with sometimes dismay and later excitement that I tend to be ahead of things. So there was no such thing as seed. Josh Koppelman announced first round capital 1 week before I announced Triple Point Ventures. So I could have worked a little harder and beat him to market, but that didn't happen. They're a great fund. We've done deals together. And so seed investing exclusively for 8 years, got to know over 300 VCs at the top 10 funds because I was running a balance sheet fund on behalf of a large venture debt shop. So they wanted the network. I wanted to know how these people did what they did. I also wanted to know who my entrepreneurs should be thinking of as future board members. I had a very challenging board at my public company, and I've always been concerned about making sure entrepreneurs make their best possible choices when it comes to board members, and that means choosing the right investors. So, you know, in a single year, we had both the largest tech IPO of the decade and the fastest growing SaaS company of all time, raising at a similar amount privately. And so a lot of my friends in venture came to call, a bunch of funds started recruiting me, and I ended up doing traditional venture capital for about 7 years, mainly at NEA. New Enterprise Associates is the largest venture firm in the world historically, and a really great shop. Having said that, after a while, they discontinued the seed practice. And while that wasn't the only reason I was there, it was a big part of it. And I learned the hard way that while I can make a lot of money doing later stage investing, I really don't enjoy it as much as I enjoy seed. So I spun out of NEA about 3 years ago to start Tenacity. And now I get to do all the wonderful things that you get to do as a seed and sometimes pre-seed investor.
Great. Before we jump into like the more venture and tenacity path, I want to double tap on the fashion mall experience.com. When you were launching that at the time, there's a lot of things that were different. But when you think back, you mentioned you didn't raise any venture, but then you started to decide board members. How was that process and how much has it changed since then?
Well, so let me be a little more specific about the life of that company. So I started the company in the end of 93, took it live in middle 94. By the way, I learned the hard way another lesson. I spent 6 months on research. I learned more on being live in 6 days. I should not have spent 6 months on research. I mean, I took Unix classes. I built the first site. I should have just tried it. You know, I love Reed's point. You know, if you're not embarrassed by your first effort, you waited too long. Well, I was embarrassed, but I still waited too long. So I did raise a very small amount. I think I raised $100,000 and I put in $400,000 alongside after having run the company for over a year. And I gave them 20% of the company. Now, a lot of people would say, wow. I mean, first of all, very naive. Didn't know anything about fundraising. Had never met a VC. These weren't VCs. But I did that deal not because I needed the money. Obviously, if I could put in 400 grand on my own, I mean, I was doing okay. I had every business I ever started, I rolled all the money from one into the next one.
Yeah.
And I really thought when I discovered the web, this was going to be the big one. So I did the deal with them for 3 reasons. One, they had a beautiful office on 57th and Madison they were going to let me use. Great location in New York City. 2, they had engineers that I could split with them, and I had no access to engineering talent.
Right.
And 3, I thought they were a access to capital. In the short term, they weren't, but in the long run, we became public because of an introduction they made and help they provided.
Yeah.
So even though I gave them 20% of my company for investing the same amount in value proportionally that I did, I do think they earned it, and they did exceptionally well. Yeah. So having said that, they were never on the board. When we signed the underwriter's letter, we basically bootstrapped, except for that $100,000 until the underwriter's letter. At that point, in conjunction with that, we raised $1 million of equity, and they actually forced us to take $1 million worth of debt, but I immediately paid it back like the next day. It was just a way for them to achieve more value for themselves from a fund in New York. And he got on the board. And then through him, I met somebody else that tried to buy the company. We said no. He put an investment in and also joined the board. I just did not do what I tell all my entrepreneurs to do. Diligence the hell out of your investors before you give them a board seat. Now, look, in fairness, sometimes you don't have any choice. We had foolishly hired a banker to help us raise money at one point in a private raise, something I would not encourage anybody to do. And at one point, it wasn't going, I need this money to run this company. Get me this money. Like I just had to be able to achieve what I wanted to achieve with that business. It was non-negotiable. And I meant it. So I have seen companies destroyed by bad board members. I've seen companies materially enhanced by good ones. People underestimate how impactful the right or wrong board member can be. And sometimes just being a non-event is good enough, but it's needs more time.
You make your way out west, and I think this was interesting that you basically coincidentally launched basically when First Round Capital did. Was this board experience that you had some of the tailwinds behind, hey, I think this seed investing is interesting and not many people are doing it?
The board experience wasn't. I mean, it informed how I think about how I can be helpful to entrepreneurs. I'm very, for lack of a better term, paternal as an investor, and I want my entrepreneurs to have the absolute best. But that doesn't mean you don't give them tough love. I mean, if you want your children to have the best, you don't just give them everything.
Right.
It was one of my proudest moments when my son reached out to me as an adult and said how appreciative he was of the fact that I always made it clear I was proud of him. And my wife's like, but you're the mean one. I was like, no, I was hard on him, but that's because he has greatness in him and he has the ability to rise up to it. And he understands now, like that was touching for me, that he looks back, not at my, I don't know. I always say, my wife hates this quote, as she hates so many of my quotes, but we've been married for 30 years and she puts up with it. I am the iron glove on the velvet fist. Okay. Right? So mainly the velvet fist, and then there's me trying to enforce discipline. But, it's the same. And part of what I really, I don't tell entrepreneurs what to do. I do tell them a lot of stories. Right. Where I believe those stories will help them understand a reality that I learned the hard way. I spent 25 years as an entrepreneur. That journey, I do not want to throw away. I want to recycle it as many times as I can and help as many people as I can. So it wasn't that the board experience or anything related to it took me into seed investing. I think it informed my role as a seed investor in at least one element or one facet. But what did, I think it was more that, one, the cost of starting companies had plummeted. So you had a time in the past where, I'll give you an example. Ashimall, when it was public, had $1 million rack of servers, or I think it was $250,000 a rack for our servers, and like $10,000 a month for bandwidth. We kept it there. It was at Equinox, or whatever it was called. Because as a public company, it was important that you showed, tier 1, top 5 accountants, blah, blah, blah. So the minute we took that company private, I moved it onto a colo facility for $99 a month. Somebody else's machine. Nothing changed. No performance differences, no speed impact. It was like, wow. Something that used to take industrial scale effort is now doable for $100. That's insane. So you had all these smart people that were seeing this new world. The internet was still, the web was, I started my web business in 93 because that's when Berners-Lee created www. There'd been an internet for 30 years before that. It's just the web that changed it all. So, I'm out there starting this out 2007. The web's been around for a while. Yeah. But there was still a lot of business models that hadn't been discovered yet, a lot of new ideas that hadn't been tested. And it did not take a lot to test them. The idea was that with $1 million or less and smart ideas and great code and energy and thought, you could actually test out and prove or disprove things that could go on to be interesting businesses. And at the same time, what I noticed was I got involved with 1 or 2 angel groups and did not appreciate that experience at all. Extraordinarily slow, tiny little checks, I found too much friction for the entrepreneurs. And then the venture folks had gotten bigger and bigger and bigger because, pre-90s, venture funds were single digit hundreds of millions of dollars. Wow. I was just talking to a guy whose company was funded by Kleiner Perkins in the early days, $2.4 million round. Kleiner led with 800K.
Wow.
That round was 10 million or less in valuation.
Yeah.
Venrock followed with like a couple $100,000. And now all of a sudden, when you needed a relatively modest amount of money, you didn't have anybody to go to. Yeah. That's where I saw this basically gap in the market that I wanted to fill.
And then it became obvious for many people, but you were there before.
Yeah, I mean, there's a group I like called the Obvious Ventures. Everything's obvious is brilliant in hindsight. But as I said, I've been ahead of things my entire life.
Yeah.
And there is no place to be paid better for being ahead of things than venture.
Yeah.
The only thing is you can't be too far ahead because that and bankruptcy are pretty similar.
No, so I wanted to hit on a few of these investments you've made, and you were a very early investor in Lending Club, DB, Branch, and I came across an interesting quote from the founder of Branch that basically said you flew to Barcelona to help them win a pitch competition. And yep. I thought, I have not heard of something like this. Could you share that story? Because that was interesting. And it shows kind of the commitment you do have.
Yeah, look, I think anything's fair game in helping an entrepreneur as long as it's legal and ethical.
Yeah.
Branch, phenomenal company, I believe would be my Google. Still believe there's a lot of chance that will be the case. It's raised $650 million to date. Mm-hmm. I did their seed round. I introduced them to their seed investor, who became their Series A investor. I personally co-led their Series A with my own capital, which I've only done once out of, say, 180 deals. Well, we were about to announce the Series B, and I think we were in a board meeting, and I said, hey, would you want to go to Barcelona for Mobile World Congress? And funnily enough, these were Stanford guys, super smart, 3 guys and a gal. But they were relatively new to mobile, and they said, Mobile World Congress, what's that? And I said, it's the largest mobile conference in the world, more around the equipment carriers and everything else, but it feels like it would be the right kind of place for you guys to make a splash. And they said, well, I don't know, we're really busy, but I mean, I guess if you could get us a speaking slot, we would go. And I said, great, let me see what I can do. And I'd be happy to help in any way I could. Now, the reality is I spent about 48 hours on that because everybody I called said the same thing. You're an idiot. Like, this is the biggest conference in the sector. It happens once a year. Everything is planned a year in advance.
Right.
Not only will you not get a speaking slot, you shouldn't even go if you haven't booked the meetings in advance because everybody is so booked out. I think I actually spent 24 hours on it, not 48. Because on the final of my eternal number of actual phone calls, I got to a guy who said, oh, I'll be there. I'm judging a startup competition. Let me see if there's room for another slot. Okay. It's on the main stage. I think it's right after Zuck speaks. And he called me back. He's like, yeah, I got you in. So I was so excited. Look at what I have done for my founder. I have gotten him the impossible. And I called him,
notice.
Dude, I did it. Everybody told me it could not be done. I got you this slot. He's like, great, that's awesome.
He's shocked.
And he said, but it's really, you said you could help, right? I was like, I will do whatever I can. He's like, we're going to be really busy. You think you could go? And I was like, wait, what? It's next week, right? Like, so are you asking me to cancel 40 meetings, which was how many I think I had for next week, and find a way to get to Barcelona, the single most difficult to get to place in the world right now because everybody from Silicon Valley goes there for this conference and find a place to stay when they're all sold out and pitch for you from the stage? Like, yeah, that would be great. So I said, yes.
Okay.
So that also took another 24 hours because look, just getting the flight was an enormous pain in the butt because I am pretty cheap. Yeah. I mean, they paid for it, but I was like, I don't want to overspend. And getting a place to stay, much worse. So I ended up getting a couch in a shared house with a founder I had met once, who was a really nice lady who was in the mobile space. And I remember that. I reached out to her and I said, I wonder if you know anybody that's going that might have a spare room. She said, actually, we're renting a house and there's a 4-bedroom. We have 4 people, but there's a couch. If you want it, you can have it. I was like, awesome.
Great.
So then I went and it turns out our competition was like on the 3rd day. It was on the main stage. It was a huge auditorium. Huge. Got to get the Trump hands out. And so I had like 3 days. So I just spent nonstop just doing biz dev, just going around meeting people, trying to tell them my branch was great and they should do business with them, got them some contacts. Then the competition came. I went on stage. I pitched. I won. And that made global news. So I think that was a great lift for them as a brand. And it was incredibly hard because like these were like 18-hour days. I'm not young anymore. It took me about a week to recover. But I'm very proud of having done it. In fact, on the background of one of my images, like I think my LinkedIn, is me in a red quilted jacket with a microphone. That was me pitching for Branch at Mobile World Congress.
I'll have to go find that.
Yeah. I liked the picture. It made television. It was great. It was great.
Yeah.
And like I was so strongly convinced that that company was the company.
Yeah.
It'd be a little hard for me not to have won, to be honest, because I was just up there. I had so much conviction.
Yeah.
It was what it was. The company deserved to win, and they did.
No, that's so interesting. And I assume they sent you the pitch deck, right? Or did you have to make that too in the 24 hours?
That I don't remember. I think we sort of walked through the salient points. Obviously, I knew the company pretty well, having invested since seed and being on the board. But I think I built it. I might have had them. They definitely helped me build it because I didn't have the time. I was trying to find the flights and the hotel.
Right.
We sort of talked about what it would be, and they'd send me a rev, and I would send it back, and they'd come back to me with whatever. And Mata that was there was great, very, very helpful in that. So definitely a joint effort. I mean, it was. I've only been back to Mobile World Congress once or twice since. Is just it makes CES look tiny.
Really,
so big, just enormous.
Interesting. Well, I want to stay on task here so we keep moving through. But you mentioned basically you went to NEA and then that inspired you to start Tenacity. And I think that's how we've crossed paths now as you guys have looked in LATAM and made some investments. What was the gap you saw and why Tenacity now at this point?
Well, that I actually don't think in this case I saw a gap. I think in this case, by the time I left in NEA, having spent 15 years doing seed investing, having then learned that I could do Series A, B, and C investing, but that I didn't enjoy it as much.
Yeah.
So when NEA discontinued the seed practice, I pitched the firm on doing an NEA branded seed fund, and Forrest and Scott and Tony, who were running the firm at the time. And Forrest came back to me and said, "Hey, Scott and I were talking." I was like, "You're really good at this. Why don't we just give you the first check and help you meet LPs?"
Okay.
So we'll help you spin out. And so that is exactly what I did. And it's been awesome. I mean, look, I'm a quirky dude. So I always used to say, NEA is the ultimate white shoe firm. I was sort of blue suede shoes in a white shoe shop. And, it was great. I don't think I'm not the flavor they're accustomed to, but I did. I mean, I made a 97% IRR for my LPs. I did the job I was meant to do. Yeah. It's just that it wasn't as fun. Not NEA. It was the late stage investing. That's the crux of it. I deployed like $80 million into this company and we did exceptionally well. But the process, seed investing, the entrepreneurs tend to actively desire your input on the things they believe you have expertise in. The later stage you get, the less interest there is. I could be the world's foremost authority on, I don't know, Italian pizza ovens, but an entrepreneur that is a late stage founder that has raised enough money and has enough pride that has literally been to a friend's house that has one pizza oven will say, "Oh, no, it's different now, Ben. I'm all good. My buddy Bob has a pizza. I know everything I need to know."
I got it.
Really, I have a PhD in pizza ovens and I studied pizza ovens for 18 years. My family has been doing pizza ovens in Italy for, obviously none of this is true. I made it all up.
Yeah, of course.
That part I found frustrating because I would watch entrepreneurs make mistakes and I could not explain away the reason that it was a mistake and they would go on and make the mistake anyway.
Yeah.
With seed investing, you've got a real shot. I've had multiple entrepreneurs say that my advice or help was material. Branch is certainly one in a different way, but I've had one person tell me that I tipped them off on something that literally saved the company's life. I have another one that said the advice I gave him in terms of helping him form the sales org was, world changing for him. If I could give that level of advice even once every 4 years, I'd be the single best investor of all time. Plenty of entrepreneurs have told me I'm their single best investor in terms of value add. So look, I have pride.
Yeah.
I like it when I can provide an entrepreneur actually, one, has impact, and two, they appreciate it. Look, if they don't appreciate it, but it has impact, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
It is amazing how many times entrepreneurs will eventually do the things you're trying to encourage them to do, totally forget that you ever brought it up.
Oh, it was their idea at that point.
At least it happened. At least, if you don't care who gets credit for it, lots of stuff can get done.
It's all good. No, and when I was looking at kind of your guys' thesis and I came across your LinkedIn, you really focus on pre-seed, but will occasionally do seed.
No, it's the other way around. It's almost
seed,
all seed.
Seed, and you occasionally do pre-seed.
Yes.
Why is that? Why do you like seed?
Well, I like traction.
Yeah.
For an idea, I say I need 5 things to make an investment. People, great idea, huge market. Sometimes you can only assess the quality of the idea in the market with some amount of traction and customers to talk to. Other times it may be obvious to you, at least in your mind, why this can be enormous. When I do pre-seeds, it's usually something where I just think the scope is even bigger. Although I need to believe any company I invest in can be a future public company. Even when I think about LATAM, I'm still thinking about companies which can ultimately go public in the United States, even if they're entirely LATAM focused companies. Like I have a company down there called Capital, phenomenal company. It's a neobank and a regular bank, an SMB lender, and it's basically Divvy for Latin America. Grown just, I mean, like this.
Yeah, literally.
I don't know if I'm allowed to share their numbers, but like they're almost 40x bigger than when I invested in them, and it's only been 3 years.
Wow.
So, like to me, they're going to bank the SMBs of Latin America.
Right.
I don't care if they ever touch the United States, but I think it should be a New York Stock Exchange.
And there's enough of them. Trust me, as you know.
Yeah, there's quite a few. I mean, it's a big. There's 16 Spanish-speaking countries. You don't even have to touch Brazil. I feel like sometimes the ability to understand something, first of all, the numbers, the traction is sort of the footing of everything you believe down to a simple thing.
Gotcha.
Okay, here's a fake pitch.
Yeah.
I am an alchemist. I have actually figured out how to spin lead into gold. I have a spinning wheel. It's magic. It spins lead into gold. Great. That is big.
Yeah.
If I believed in magic. When did you start the spinning wheel?
Yeah.
I built the spinning wheel 2 years ago. Wow. How much gold do you have? I have 1 ounce of gold. Wait, help me understand how it took you 2 years. Well, it works, but it only generates a half an ounce a year, and it can't be any bigger than it is. Okay, well, that's a pass because unless you can build an unlimited number of those, I guess then maybe it would be okay.
Yeah.
But I'm an alchemist. I can spin lead into gold. When did you invent the spinning wheel? I invented it 6 months ago. How much gold do you have? 45 tons. Wow. Okay, like you get an understanding of the reality of the vision and dream and magic that they're trying to create in terms of what it's able to output.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody just last night at a conference, just a mixer around SaaStr, and she said, "Oh, blah blah blah." And what I heard was, "We do this thing." It was an ESG related thing. I said, "Oh, how's it going?" And I thought what she said was $7 million of ARR. Okay. I was like, "Wow, how long have you been doing this?" 2 years. Wow, $7 million of ARR. She said, "Oh, no. It's a $7 trillion industry." Oh, what's the ARR? About $110,000. Okay, thanks very much. 2 years to $110,000. You might think it's a $7 trillion industry, but apparently nobody in the industry does. So I need you to have, there's one of my favorite quotes. There's a guy named Bill Price. He started TPG, and we were having lunch with these winemakers at this company he'd bought called Coaster Brown. And we were talking about plans. And he said, "Yeah, my favorite quote about planning is Mike Tyson." Do you know this one?
You have a plan to get punched?
Yeah. Everybody has a plan when they step in the ring with me until I punch them in the face. And he's like, that's business. Everybody has a plan. $7 trillion. Punch. 120,000 in 2 years. Yeah, you're on the map. Yeah, sorry. I'm really excited for your belief system and your plan, but so far the world hasn't lined up with you. So go figure out how to make that work, and then we can talk again.
Yeah. And off Capital, and I actually did an episode with Arjun. So he brought up Capital as well. But along with Capital, what other parallel to
the difference is I don't claim that I started Capital. I just claim that I invested.
Yeah, that's true. Co-incubated though.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, I'm pretty sure I invested before he did, and I know for a fact I didn't incubate them. So sometimes
subtle detail.
Tiny. Hey, tiny. Elon Musk is now legally the founder of Tesla. He didn't found the company. No. He invested in it. Right. But he got, I think he might have had to sue to be able to call himself co-founder. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's just a slightly different set of realities.
Exactly.
Maybe he should have been forced. I have no issue with Elon. I think he's awesome. I think Doge is great. But it would be interesting if he said, "I am legally entitled to say I am co-founder," not that he is actually a co-founder, because he's not.
But what else is interesting to you in LATAM? I know there's
I love generally fintech. I know you're going to go deeper, but I certainly feel free to. But I will say, for me so far, it has been about fintech. So Capital has been phenomenal. Mm-hmm. I have a company out of Colombia, which has just moved to Mexico City, called BitSports is the name of the app, and Fanki, Fanki is the name of the app, and BitSports is the name of the company. It is ticketing and access control to stadiums and on behalf of sports teams, what you would call football and we would call soccer. Just tremendous growth. Did as much revenue in January as in the first 6 months of last year, and then ended up doing 2.5 times that much in the entire quarter. Just awesome growth. Phenomenal female founder.
Wow.
Another company I have down there called Metis, which records and rewards cash spend in physical retail, which I really like. The growth there has been excellent. They have some great partners there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily call it pivoted, but they've shifted their focus from an app-based experience to a WhatsApp-based experience, which I think is a huge unlock.
Yeah.
And all of those things. So meet us. You've got 90+% of these transactions happening in cash. By rewarding and recording, you give value to the consumer, you give information to the vendor, the store, you get vendors involved. It's a win for everybody involved. It's a beautiful loop. More stores, more consumers, more brands, more consumers, and round and round and round it goes. But it speaks to the fact that the underbanked population in Latin America is enormous. Like in the US, when you say underbanked, to me, I'm just already tuned out. Don't care. Wells Fargo has a free program. The kids got it when they were kids, but they're adults now, and we have nothing to do with it. And it's still free. If you don't bounce checks, it doesn't seem to me that banks in the U.S. are rapacious. But apparently, less than 40% of people in Latin America have credit and credit cards. FanKey, do you use their app to buy your ticket to go see your favorite? I don't know anything about sports, but whatever, the ABC League in Mexico City play the BYD League out of Barcelona, and you now have a wallet to buy from the concessions. You can take that wallet outside of the stadium, and all of a sudden we've given you credit. Now, maybe it's microcredit, maybe it's more. We can also see your activities. Let's face it, there's different types of underwriting. In the US, it became very popular to do cash underwriting for startups. We don't have to know anything about your profit and loss. We just have to know you have millions of dollars in the bank. You have, and some people will give you, like, let's say 25% of what you've got in the bank as your credit. Fine. $4 million, $1 million with credit. So if I see that you can spend $40 a week consistently in certain types of shops, maybe I can give you $20 in credit. It's a trial, and maybe 40 after that, maybe 60, maybe 80. So I think that opportunity is huge. Similarly with Capital, except for businesses, where I would argue, one thing I've been amazed at, I was talking to this one investor in Latin America, in Mexico City. I won't name them, but it was just so clear to me that there's a different pace. I said at one point, we were talking about a round we were both looking at. And I'll give you two comments that I thought were hilarious. Well, the first one was, I was like, I don't know, I'm a little worried. This thing's been going on for a while. He's like, really? I don't think so. It's been like a month or two. And I was like, yeah, I know. That's my problem. He's like, well, I mean, if it was like 4 or 6 months, I'd be worried. I'm like, what? Apparently people routinely take 6 to 12 months to do deals. It's like 6 to 12 weeks here means it's not an exciting deal. And usually you want to be doing deals that are exciting. And then, I'd asked him if he wanted to team up on the deal. He said, no, he had people to work on with it. And later, more out of pride than anything, I was like, you might want to reconsider teaming up with us, because bluntly, I'm pretty sure we're going to win. And you might not you might just lose and not be able to participate. While I would be open to letting you be involved. And his response was, I don't mind losing every once in a while. I was like, wow, I'm going to eat your lunch. And by the way, I did win that deal. In the end, even though I won it, there was some weirdness in pricing. We decided mutually that maybe not to do it. But I was like, there's only one group I don't want to have in this deal, and it's this guy. But it's like, you're slow and you don't mind losing? What?
And you don't want to collaborate. I offered. And you don't want to collaborate. Okay.
I mean, it's just like, wow, that is a whole nother world, man. But I have noticed, in fairness, that there's just a different pace. And sense of urgency than what I'm accustomed to. And that can be a very dangerous thing for the entrepreneurs as well. Now, it may not impact them in Latin America. If 6 to 12 months is normal for a round and you do it in 3, maybe you're Speedy Gonzalez. I mean, not that, just thinking of fast creatures or what, the Roadrunner. Maybe you're the Roadrunner. Okay. But if, I don't know, but if you come pitch US VCs, which is what I want for all of my companies there, like, it's a different reality. And time pressure is critical. Time kills all deals. Without time pressure, everybody assumes they have an unlimited amount of time to do the diligence, and eventually it all just fades. So it was interesting to me to sort of learn, it's a plus and a minus. It's a plus because it's almost beyond my comprehension that I would see how I could lose to a local player. I'm sure they're very good local players. I mean, I did meet some that seemed very good. But like, I have access to 300 tier 1 VCs in Sand Hill Road in New York City. I think I can offer enough value that it would be extraordinarily odd if I were to lose to a local VC who's taking the kind of time that it appears people take, because I should just be done with 3 months to spare before they even get around to making the decision. Now, at the same time, I want all my entrepreneurs to be able to raise in the US, but some of them won't. And then I might be trapped. Look, I abandoned the UK as a market because I'm very unhappy with the syndicates. They're not really VCs in many cases. They call themselves that. They're really bankers, and they don't take risk, and they're not playing venture the way I consider venture to be played. All my time, my 18 years, has been hyper-focused on funding companies I believe can be funded by the top 10 funds in Silicon Valley.
Okay.
That is tier one, classic Sand Hill Road venture capital. It's like, if you want to be a phenomenal actor, your goal is not to go to Chicago and do a play in some little theater company on some back street. Your goal is to get to Broadway.
Right.
And so I'm often a little obsessive about, are we talking Broadway quality here?
Yeah.
Because I'm, okay, fine. Sometimes you go off Broadway for a while before you go to Broadway, but not interested in the Chicago troupe or the Canadian troupe or the Mexico City troupe.
Right.
Although I love, but I do love, here's the last point I'll make. I love my LATAM founders. They are so focused, fast driving, like Capital. I already told you 40x where I was when I invested 3 years ago. There is zero for the kind of pace and slowness that I've seen in some of the VCs in Latin America for an entrepreneur that's going to grow like that.
Exactly.
So I think the entrepreneurs are strong and the VCs are unknown to me.
Okay. Last two questions here. What traits do you see with founders that you consistently see in the top, 2% or 1% of founders?
Yeah, it's like I named the fund tenacity for a reason. People have all kinds of ways of putting it, chew glass, run through walls, but it's the never give up, absolute drive and conviction and tenacity and grit to just go and go and go and never stop and never slow down. There's only been one book I have ever given to all my founders. It's a book called Amp It Up by Slootman. And the title is really all you need to know. This is a guy, I don't know if you know who Slootman is. He was the CEO of Data Domain, ServiceNow, and most recently Snowflake.
Okay.
3 multi-billion, in fact, in one case, deca-billion-dollar value public companies that he ran. And his whole point is, it is unnatural to wake up every day and have absolute, total, and complete drive and conviction at 100% of your capacity. But that is what you have to do to build phenomenal businesses. And he's talking about businesses operating in the many billions of dollars. That drive, that ambition, that absolute need. So that's one of the things I'm often trying to spend time with entrepreneurs, is trying to understand what they need and what they want.
Yeah.
Everybody wants a certain level of something, some level of success in their life.
Yeah.
The problem is, if your want is here, you'll stop when you get here.
Yeah.
If your need is here, you'll never stop till you get there. And I have people like Parker Conrad, who runs Rippling. I don't think it'll ever be big enough. His current valuation is about 16. I don't think there's a number that's big enough for him. I think his need is unlimited.
Yeah. It's
just, as they used to say, it's just a yardstick. It is you being able to measure yourself in some form in the world in what you have achieved. And in the world of entrepreneurship, for better or for worse, that measurement comes in forms like revenue, valuation, profitability, rule of 40, right? Mm-hmm. They're numbers.
Yeah.
Valuation is, by the way, the least important, but it does reflect all the other things. You do not get a $16 billion valuation without crushing it on all the other metrics.
Yeah. Okay. Last question. What makes a great early stage investor, in your opinion?
Man, I wish I knew, because then I could be one.
Come on.
Well, look, so there's so many pieces to that. When I moved to Silicon Valley, I didn't believe you could be a phenomenal VC if you hadn't previously been an entrepreneur.
You still think that? Or no?
I've realized that that's not true. There are many phenomenal VCs. Scott Sindel, who runs NEA, Mike Moritz during his time at Sequoia, many VCs that were never entrepreneurs. I don't think Bill Gurley was ever an entrepreneur. And he was a very good VC. Yeah. Now, there are plenty of other people, both at Benchmark and at Sequoia and at all those firms, that were entrepreneurs and are exceptional. So I think you get an advantage, or you have the opportunity to have an advantage. Yeah. I know plenty of ex-entrepreneurs that are terrible VCs as well. But I don't love the fact that the market has become, in many cases, at least they were operators. Scott Sindel was a young but empowered with important responsibilities person at Microsoft. Mike Moritz was actually a journalist. And there's traits in journalism, I was a journalist for 10 years, that are useful to investing. There are traits in poker playing that are useful to investing. I think if someone wants to be a better investor, they should play poker. There's a lot of lessons there. You don't have to bet a lot, but you should bet real money. Meaning dollars and cents, not like play plastic chips. I think there are just so many things. What I think is not useful is the current pattern where the vast majority of associates in tier one firms went to Ivy League or high quality schools, got jobs at one of a small number of banks, and were then recruited by one of two recruiters to do a roadshow to these different venture firms to be hired in as associates. Okay. I don't say that can't be it, but the problem is now it's all of it. It's like every associate.
Yeah.
And I don't love that because one of the worst investors I ever knew had exactly that background. And he spent so much time buried in the weeds of the spreadsheets that he could never make a decent investment
Yeah.
because he was, here's the ratio. There's two axes in investing: art, science.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess this is art and this is science. The earlier stage an investor you are, the more art there is to it. Right. The later stage an investor you are, the more science. There's obviously some science, but if you're investing in 2 or 3 people in a room with PowerPoint slides and nothing else, why don't you show me the science of how you're going to figure that one out in Excel? You're not. No. Okay. But if you're doing a late stage growth round and you're not spending all your time in the numbers, right, you're insane. Yeah. Okay. So it's that blend, and finding that blend and being able to leverage each appropriately is important. And maybe being realistic about it from stage. Like, that's probably one of the reasons I didn't love doing late stage. I can handle digging in. Although, in fairness, we always had great associates to do that work against, here's my 17 questions. Please come back with the answers. Come back with the answers, thank you. Right. But like, what makes me proud is not, yes, when a company succeeds, I mentioned Rippling has a $16 billion valuation. I was in his very first round. That is great, but I did that because of Parker. So I don't know if I have a lot of pride around that. I have pride in Parker. I had pride that I was able to get to invest in Parker when he was at Zenefits. Yeah. I'm glad that I supported him. I support my entrepreneurs. But like when I found Lending Club, I'm proud of that one. I heard him on a local AM radio station when he was first starting out talking about this idea. And I said, wow, this could totally change the way banking and lending works. Mm-hmm. And I spent weeks just trying to find my way to him because I didn't know him and I didn't know anybody that knew him. And I finally found my way to somebody in the middle of the stack in the company, and they offered to meet me. I'm like, no, I got to meet Renaud. And then I spent forever figuring it out and finally made an investment. Wow. And, that was so early. I'm proud of the fact that I was willing to put material money behind an investment in an idea that I believed in that had not yet been proven, or maybe it had some early proof. Yeah. Minimal so traction. When I'm able to sort of, for lack of a better term, see around a corner, that makes me feel good. Right. And that is where I like to spend my time. I am not a momentum investor. When I lived in New York City, most of the wealthiest people I knew, certainly when they were young and they were on the up and comer, were like bankers. And I remember one guy, I was like, so tell me what you do. He's like, well, he basically said, I'm a Momo guy. I was like, I don't know what that means. He's like, I'm a momentum investor. I was like, what is that? He said, well, I find a stock that's going up and I buy it and then I sell it when it goes up some more. And I was like, that makes you proud? Like, you got on somebody else's train because it was going fast and you jumped off later after it accelerated a bit? Like, you do nothing. You add nothing. You have no vision. You're just a leech. And it's probably too aggressive. And I know that I can be a little, arrogant about the way I think about how people create value in the world. There's nothing that frustrates me more. There's a guy in New York. I was looking at apartments in New York, and you walk into the elevator and there's this guy and he's like, what, floor 6? And he pushes the button because there's a union that made that job stay in place. Of course. And all I can think when I'm looking at this person that just infuriates me by his very existence is, how do you go home at night and spend time with your family and not feel like anything other than a leech on society that creates no value and has no purpose? Right. What, do you go home and brag about how well you push the button? I pushed 17 buttons today. You want to make a living. I get it. Yeah. You don't have any ambition to better yourself in a way that you could make money doing something that actually mattered to someone. Yeah. You only exist because a usurious organization insisted that you exist so someone could pass a law. Wow. And that's sort of how I feel about, look, you can also be wrong. And when you're a late stage investor, there's plenty of risk you get to take. It's a long-winded way of saying, I think when you make the most money in venture, which is how people will measure you, it comes down to conviction over consensus. And if your conviction, standing alone on a hill, seeing something others don't see, comes true, there's just nothing better than that. Yeah. That makes you just feel, that just raises the hill higher in your own personal pride.
Yeah. And your binoculars get farther out to see more.
Well, I don't know. I've been doing this 18 years. I still worry all the time if I'm wrong on things. Everything that looks obvious in the past, now having succeeded at the time, was not. No. You worry a lot. Like, it took me a very long time to make that investment in Lending Club. It worked out exceptionally well, but there was nothing obvious about it at the time. There were many things that could have killed it. There was another company called Prosper. That one's dead. Okay. Yeah. So, people always like, oh, I would have known that. I would have figured that out. Yeah. Really? I didn't see you there. It's, I probably take too much pride. I went to last story, but this will certainly be a window into the world of the intriguingly weird squirrels in my brain. No, very kindly invited me to the New York Stock Exchange for the IPO of Lending Club. I recently negotiated in a settlement that I have the right to be on the podium of the New York Stock Exchange in a deal that I'm in when and if they go public. Why? Because I was on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange when Renault stood on the podium with investors, almost all of whom came after me. And I still remember looking up thinking, why am I not there?
Yeah.
You people followed me. You came after me.
Yeah.
Why am I not given the credit of having seen this opportunity before you? Now, the answer is they put in a lot more money and got on the board. Okay, so I get it. I am a realist, but I'm also a first principles simpleton that believes life should be fair. And I'm like, I was there before all but two of you.
Yeah.
And, sometimes that can get, I don't know, it won't get in the way. I will close with my favorite saying. For all that I've just said, one of my favorite sayings I try to live by: you can get mad, don't let your money get mad. You've got to make the right decision for the investment. And even if it's not the right decision for your personal pride or ego. And I can be for all that I'm saying, I'm actually a pretty laid back, chill dude. But I do, when I get it right, I want to be recognized for having gotten it right. Like, what's the point of hitting a home run if nobody puts on the...
That's a wrap for this episode of Cut the Check by VCMX. If you enjoy this conversation, I would really appreciate it if you subscribed and leave a review. It really helps more founders and investors discover the show. You could find me on LinkedIn at Mack Meyer, or check out my website at mackmeyer.com for more insights on startup venture capital and the Latin America ecosystem. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next week.